Where does Charles Oliveira sit in the all-time greats at 155? The all-time greats. I mean, right now, that's a very clear Khabib Nurmagomedov. But where does Charles sit? Now, let me ask you a different question. If Charles runs over Islam in 2 minutes, if Charles goes out there and within 2 minutes disposes of Islam Makhachev, where does Charles rank? And I have a feeling a lot of you are going to say number one. I have a feeling that most of you don't have Charles lower than 2 of all time as of right now. He goes out there and he runs over, he demolishes Islam in 2 minutes. Does that move him to number 1? No rhetorical question, but I want you to take just a moment to reflect and give your answer. I believe that the greatest ever can be based on one performance. Every time we have a talk of the greatest ever, we end up comparing resumes. I watched this happen worldwide between LeBron and Jordan, and it all came down to who had more rings, which that's not what it's intended to do. It could be one night, it could be one performance. The world of boxing, by example, has united together. And this goes back to, I believe, 1989, but it was the night that Mike Tyson fought Michael Spinks. It was a 93-second contest, but the world of boxing says that Mike Tyson, that one that Spinks had to face, is the greatest boxer to have ever done it. But see, I like that. If you can just isolate a guy's absolute best moment against somebody else in his absolute best moment. Not a body of work, not years, not money, not t-shirts, not how many tickets he sold. Who was the absolute best, even in one moment? So I like that because people have pushed back on Charles. I saw a piece that Charles Oliveira has 8 losses in the UFC and all 8 were by submission. Now, I did not go back and check that. That was said by Khabib. I accepted it as truth. I haven't actually vouched for that, so don't think that you have to correct me. But if you want to think that you can dismiss Charles from the greatest of all time list because he has 8 losses, I disagree. He has the right to come into his own. He has the right to get better. Every time he walks out there, he gets a new chance to claim GOAT status. So I'll ask you a third time, where do you put Charles Oliveira in the greatest of all time list if he demolishes Islam in 2 minutes? The heir apparent, the one that the king himself said, where do you put him? You probably have either moved him to number 1 or you have kept Charles at number 2. You're probably in one of those schools of thought, though. But if I ask you the exact same question in reverse and I ask you, where do you put Islam if he demolishes Charles in 2 minutes? You don't put Islam at 1 and you don't have Islam at 2. Why? I mean, why? What piece of psychology is that? Is it back to where we're comparing resumes? Because Islam would then have the second greatest record of all time, only behind King Khabib. He would be 17-1, and the 1 was his first one, which a lot of us know we got to dismiss anyway. He's stopping guys. Dan Hooker at one point was ranked number 5 in the world. Islam was done within the first round. That's impressive. If he goes out there and he not only beats Charles, he destroys him. 2 minutes. I'm just throwing an arbitrary number at you, but let's say 2 minutes. It's not close. It's not competitive. He proves that he's the absolute best. Why does he not, within your minds, either go to the greatest ever or number 2, where you just put Charles at, but Charles has 8 losses? I'm purely curious. Like, that piece of the psychology has never quite been exposed to me. I had a fight in my career. I was fighting the number 1 guy in the world. Number 1 guy. It was Paulo Filho. I beat him. But I didn't move up to number 1. Okay, great. Another point in my career. Now I've got the number 2 guy. His name's Yushin Okami. Collectively number 2. I beat him. But I didn't move into number 2. So then I take on the number 1 contender, a guy named Nate Marquardt. I beat him, but I didn't get that spot. They just rearranged the rankings all around me. So now going into Anderson, who's the new number 1, I tell the world this isn't even going to be close. Our skills are not even close. And after that fight, I didn't move up. And I'm only asking why. This wasn't to make it about myself. There is a piece of that psychology. There is a piece where we dismiss or we don't give the opponent the credit. But is it because we don't fully recognize it, or giving him the credit admits that we had the wrong list in the first place? If you have a top 10 of all time list and you don't have Islam on it, and you have Charles at number 1 and Islam destroys Charles, For you to then give Islam that credit means that you're admitting that your list was junk in the first place. Shouldn't you admit that? I mean, shouldn't you admit, isn't it better to admit it, but then give the credit to the right guy? I really think you have very different answers. What happens if Charles runs over Islam is going to be a very different answer than what happens if Islam runs over Charles. And that line is getting so close, guys. I heard from Ian Parker today. Ian Parker, possibly the greatest handicapper that martial arts has ever seen. And he said that there's action going right now for Islam at -170. That's incredible. For a line that was 3-1 that moved to 3.5-1, because see, bring it to 170, guys, that's you guys weighing in. The line doesn't move that. You don't get some Poindexter in a room that goes and moves the line. That's where your money starts to come in. And you guys are saying that Oliveira has a very good shot to win. I just think that's very compelling because you guys aren't wrong very often. Oliveira has shown to be a much more dynamic fighter. Oliveira is also in trouble in every single match. Islam is running through competitions, showed to be a worthy contender, but he's never been in trouble. Does that factor in? Does that matter to you? I don't have the answers to this. I'm excited for this match. I would like that piece of psychology, though. I would like to understand how you can proclaim someone the absolute best, and when he falls, you cannot now put his opponent in that same spot. That interests me. Makes me wonder. And am I right, guys? By the way, am I right? How revered would you have Charles if he runs over Islam? And how revered would you be for Islam if he ran over Charles? I feel as though the two are not equitable.